Welcome to Storytimer. Cheryl Bolin. Cheryl Bolin was 11. She was heading home after a sleepover with her best friend. She was on her bike, and she had a green bag of her overnight things and her rolled-up sleeping bag. She and her friend had a usual routine for this trip. They would go together down the road halfway, and then her friend would turn back, leaving Cheryl to go the last half alone. It was only a mile total, so Cheryl was alone for just half a mile. That's just about the length of 7 football fields. Usually her parents were watching for her as she made this trip down Lake Valley Road, but today they weren't. Her mother was in the hospital and her dad was sick at home. They lived in a very rural area, and it always had seemed very safe. They knew all their neighbors. No one can blame her parents. There's no one to blame here but her killer. It was August 19th, 1975. Cheryl and her family lived in Monrovia, Indiana. If you head west out of Indianapolis on I-70, it will take you about 30 minutes to get to the Monrovia exit onto Highway 39. Monrovia is very close to the interstate. Cheryl was 4 feet 10 inches tall and had long brown hair and blue eyes. She had on purple shorts and a white shirt. She had her bicycle too, of course. Her killer might have left the interstate that day to find a girl who was alone that he could take without witnesses. Either that, or it could be a local man who saw an opportunity. When Cheryl did not make it home at the agreed-upon time, her father began looking for her. Soon calls were made and many people were looking. They found her bicycle area in a wooded area that lined the road that she had taken. In August, in Indiana, the woods would be lush and green. The wild blackberry briars would be full of berries. More searches followed. Neighbors were questioned. Tips and leads were followed. Rumors flew. At least one newspaper reported that she had left town voluntarily with a 21-year-old. Her parents were livid about these news reports. Cheryl was a typical 11-year-old. She was looking forward to turning 12, playing with her friends, future sleepovers, and starting 6th grade. She had a happy home and enjoyed her life. She would not run away. School started. Fall came, and the first cold night was torture, wondering if Cheryl was warm. Halloween went by. Thanksgiving and Christmas were unbearable. 1975 became 1976. Cheryl's 12th birthday came and went on February 1st with no new leads and no word. Her parents had no way of knowing on that birthday that they would only have to wait another month. Cheryl was found in the first week of March in the southern part of Vigo County, about 45 minutes west of her hometown and about 25 minutes south of I-70 and just west of Highway 41. I lived in Terre Haute for a few years, and I would take 41 down to my hometown near Evansville. I-69 was not there in those days. I wonder if the perpetrator was traveling from Indianapolis to Evansville. There's no way to know. She was found by a group of people who were horseback riding along a country road in a cluster of trees near a small pond on the Birch Harlan farm. It could be that sitting up high on the horses gave them a better view of her body than someone who was passing by in a car. They might have been riding in a field and approached from that direction too. Either way, she was not far off the road. She was not wearing the purple shorts, but instead was wearing a pair of white pants with red and blue checks. She was nude from the waist up. Her sleeping bag and other belongings were scattered nearby. Nothing is written in the newspaper articles at the time about the position of her body or if her hands were tied or not. Police judged that her body had been there from the time she went missing due to the level of decomposition. Her date of death is listed then as August 19, 1975 on her death certificate. Determining the exact cause of death was difficult. It is listed as undetermined on her death certificate, and the reasoning for this is soft tissue completely decomposed. Apparently, there were no injuries to her bones that would hint at a cause of death. She could have been stabbed, strangled, or her throat had been cut. But as she was completely skeletonized, there's no way to know. Her father later took a job working with local law enforcement after her murder. There were local suspects who were questioned, and many tips came in over the years. One suspect committed suicide by hanging himself in his barn. However, no one has ever been charged in Cheryl's abduction and murder. Her killer is still being sought. When people deride parents today as being too overprotective, I think of kids like Cheryl Bolin and Kathy Combe who were taken when they were so close to home. Being a little overprotective is not a bad thing, in my opinion. There were quite a few serial killers on the loose in Indiana in the 1970s. Stephen Timothy Judy was still free. He wouldn't be caught until 1979, after he ended the lives of Cherry Lee Chastain and her 3 children. If he wasn't jailed in Illinois, he could be a possible suspect. Jeffrey Hand was still in state hospital custody in Indianapolis in 1975. He wasn't released until October of 1976, so it could not be him. Sadly, there are many other possible suspects. Those weren't the only 2. One possible suspect was Thomas Williams. His DNA was linked to a vicious attack on 3 young girls left for dead in Hancock County on the same day as Cheryl's abduction. These 3 unlucky girls were hitchhiking and were picked up by Thomas Williams. He attacked and stabbed all 3, and the youngest was raped. All 3 survived their life-threatening injuries and lived to see DNA testing find their attacker. Thomas Williams died at age 49 in a Texas prison in 1983. Could he have abducted Cheryl in Monrovia around noon, driven to Vigo County, where he killed and dumped her body, and made it back across the state in time to pick up these 3 girls on the evening of the same day? Yes, I think he easily could have done that. Indiana is not a wide state, so traveling west to east like that is not a long trip. Cheryl's killer could also be a man from out of state. I-70 in Indiana is a busy central route through Indiana. Cars and trucks speed through with plates from all over the country. In August, the interstate would have been humming with vacation travelers, 18-wheelers, light trucks, and small cars. At Terre Haute, they could head south to Evansville or north to Chicago, or continue west into Illinois and beyond. Indiana was not alone in terms of violent crimes in the 1970s. This was happening everywhere. Hopefully, medical examiners and law enforcement have preserved evidence in Cheryl's case. Were fingerprints found on her bicycle? If her fingernails were still intact, did they scrape under the nails and save those scrapings? Were her belongings preserved? DNA might still be found on some of those items. Her family and friends deserve to know. Her life was taken from her and her future was stolen. We never know all that the world lost when someone is ripped away like this. Her case is still open and unsolved. Rest in peace, Cheryl Bolin.